Hello everyone, this is Maya Kana, and I am a psychic who specializes in twin flame connections. And in today's Q&A video, I wanted to answer the question, how can I improve my intuition? And this was submitted by a client who has been working to hone her gut instincts and who wants to actually move beyond that and really explore the realm of spirit and intuition. So what I wanted to do here in this Q&A video is to share a little bit of my own experience and also to share several tips about how you can sort of supercharge your intuition. And I'm going to start with the tips. But before I do that, I wanted to say that every single person is psychic. There's really no such thing as a psychic. A psychic is just somebody who has opened up their psychic pathways and who has really trained their intuition. But we all have the capacity to be psychic, and everyone's higher self, everyone's soul essence, the core of who we really are, is very psychic and intuitive and empathetic and is all-knowing. So what makes us believe that we are not psychic is a lot of things that are sort of going on in the earth plane. One of those things is that when we enter into a human body, we get a sort of amnesia that makes us forget about our soul history, and that's purposeful. It's so that we can forget what we've learned so that we can have the chance to awaken again, which is something that's really exciting to us on a soul level. And it's also so that we can learn our lessons, and so that we can really learn them, and so that we can choose to learn them. If we sort of popped into a body and we knew what our lessons were and we remembered everything, it would be more or less impossible to actually learn. So we have this amnesia when we enter the body. I also believe personally that the sort of powers that be do a lot of things to try to subdue our psychic powers and intuition. Some of those things may include putting substances in our food, water, or air that are harmful to our psychic channels, creating very addictive media and entertainment that distracts us from finding our center, and engaging us in competitions, for example, particularly with the masculine, be that war or sports or other types of drama that feed on our psychic energy. These are just a few things that I believe are happening in the world that, we all wanted to come to. So granted, we helped to participate in the creation of this sort of madness. But those are a few things that may be making it exceedingly difficult to use our intuition. Okay, and so here are some things that you can do to combat all of that and to learn to use your intuition more. The first thing to do for anybody who wants to become more intuitive, or rather return to their intuitive state, first of all, like the person who asked this question, you really want to start with learning how to follow your gut instinct and your emotional guidance system. That is where we should all be starting. And so the way that you can do that, there's some easy tools. One of the things is, if you're asking a question or you're trying to make a decision, and that's really when intuition works best. And you might think, well, I don't have that many big psychic questions, but really we're constantly presented with sort of questions and decisions all throughout our day. Even, when you wake up, you may ask yourself, how am I going to wake up? Do I want to do some breathing before I open my eyes? Do I want to, just jump out of bed and go for a workout or whatever? So from the very beginning of the first moment of your day, you're making decisions. And one of the ways to use your intuition, if you are a beginner, is to, whenever you're confronted with a decision like that, to imagine your different sort of pathways, different choices that you could make, and see how each feels. Sort of visualize and see how each thing feels. And usually you'll notice in your body that certain things feel more true. There's sort of a way that your body will experience something that is true. It usually feels like either a neutral feeling, or it'll be like a little upliftment of energy. And then things that are not for you, that go against your intuition or go against your soul, they may feel like just a tiny drop of energy, or it could feel like anxiety, or depending how sensitive you are, it could really feel like depletion. But there'll be a difference in feeling between something that's exciting and that's in alignment with your heart versus something that isn't. So that is just where you want to begin. So let's say you've done that and you've gotten used to, following what feels good and what feels exciting and following your emotional guidance, and you want to open up more. You want to really open up your channels. You want to, whatever the next step is for you. Maybe you want to channel, or you want to be able to see your past lives, or you want to be able to communicate with your guides. How do you do that? Okay, so first and foremost, you want to determine what your strongest intuitive pathway is. And the reason why I say this is because not everybody's intuition works in the same way. In fact, there's about 10 different ways that people's intuition tends to work, and usually people have one that is really, really strong. And for me personally, I mostly use clairvoyance. So when I'm doing readings, I work almost exclusively. I have many psychic channels that are open, but my strongest one that I pull on and use the most is clairvoyance, which is seeing visions and then describing the visions to the clients. And I used to think that these visions that I saw, I used to have dreams that would come true, or I'd have little visions that would come true. And when I was a little kid, I thought it was my imagination. And I was like, wow, my imagination is like really powerful and magical because this stuff comes true. I eventually realized, Spirit was communicating with me in that way. But that might not be the way for you. In fact, I think that clairvoyance is not that popular of a psychic ability amongst the regular population. I think that most people are more likely to experience like clairsentience, which is clear feeling, or maybe they'll experience clairaudience, which is, claircognizance is probably more popular, more common, which is just a knowing, you don't even know where it came from, but you just know things. Clairaudience is the ability to hear clearly your guides or higher self or other spirits. That might not be as common. But anyway, you can also think, which chakra is the strongest in your body? Where do you tend to feel things in your body? Is it that you're sort of just getting streams of messages that are coming in through your crown chakra? Are you getting visions? That'd be your third eye. Is it that you just know what to say to people, that you just know, you just feel it, and you speak things and you don't even know where they're coming from? That would be really strong in the throat chakra. Is it that you just feel things as feeling, loving or not loving, or all the different range of emotions? That'd be the heart chakra. The real strong gut instinct would be the solar plexus, and on and on. Okay, so you want to determine what is your strongest intuitive pathway. So let's say that it's through your heart. I think that for many people listening, it'll be through their heart. So say that your strongest intuitive pathway is through your heart. As soon as you know what your strongest intuitive pathway is, and let's say you don't know, there are tools that you can look at online to figure this out, or you can get a reading, and almost any real psychic will be able to tell you how your psychic gifts work. So you could get a reading from somebody, and they'll tell you, here's what you should explore for your psychic pathways. Okay, so let's say it's your heart chakra. Whatever it is, whatever your strongest pathway is, you want to start by clearing it. Because sometimes, what we have is we have really strong psychic or intuitive abilities, but we're not clear in our field, or we're not clear in our energy body, so they're sort of misfiring, or they're not really working very well. So if your strongest chakra, for example, was your heart chakra, then it's extremely important for you to stay emotionally clear. It's extremely important then, in that case, it would be for you to determine what's your emotions versus what's somebody out there versus what are you feeling from spirit. Like, you've got to get clear in your system. So you can also sort of eat foods that strengthen the chakra that you're trying to work with. And usually, that's, again, something you can Google really easily, but usually foods that correspond with the color of the chakra will strengthen that chakra. So if you feel like your system's a bit out of balance or your pathway, you want to strengthen a particular chakra to help with your intuition, you can eat foods of that color. But in general, things that will clear everyone's system to make their intuition stronger would be some of the following things. Staying away from things that impact your consciousness, which means if you want to really have fantastic intuition, then that means you should not be exposed to any type of programming that's going to affect your energy body, which means you should eat completely organic foods. Don't eat anything with any type of chemicals. Don't watch television. Don't listen to the radio. Don't watch blockbuster films. Be very careful what you consume on YouTube. Be very careful what you read. Don't read the newspaper. Don't read magazines. Maybe get an air purifier to purify the air, especially if you live in the city. If you really want to have great intuition, you've got to eliminate the things that are probably intentionally designed to suppress your intuition. Don't drink the tap water either, because that will not help you. Okay, so yeah, so you can make just one of those changes at first if all that seems like too much. But yeah, so maybe the first thing, okay, I'm not going to drink tap water anymore. I also recommend not drinking spring water either. Sayer and I drink distilled water, which we remineralize. But anyway, so you want to start out with clearing out your system so you have a fair chance at using your intuition. I'm a big believer in being a clear channel and doing any clearing that is needed, and you can clear, there's visualizations and meditations that you can do to clear out your field. You want to use your intuition to determine what's best for you, but generally imagine filling your fields completely with white light or sparkling white light and having it just move through your chakra system and releasing anything you don't need, usually out through your feet and into the ground or into the earth. That's a quick way to clear, using sage for smudging, especially if you're an empath or you're working with your heart chakra. You need to clear your energy physically. I would recommend with sage, but you can also wear protective crystals because you want to eliminate what you're accumulating. A lot of people use salt lamps as well, maybe in the space where they're going to be trying to connect with spirit to keep it clear. I also do coffee enemas, salt baths. You have to clear out your channel first. Otherwise, there's no point. You're not going to be able to hear spirit clearly if you are not clear in your system. So sometimes, we think, oh my gosh, it's really weird, I started to awaken and then my intuition got so good. But sometimes the reason that happens is because when we start to awaken, we change our diet and lifestyle so much that our body's finally able to hear spirit again, and it wasn't that we couldn't before, it was just that our system was clogged up with all kinds of things that were affecting our ability to hear spirit. So just one by one, get rid of those things. Turn off the TV. Step one, turn off the TV. I wish in our world that there was not so much programming that impacted our consciousness. But there is, especially in the U.S., so we've just got to limit our exposure to that type of programming. So you've cleared out your channel. Now you want to use it. The next tip is to use it. So what I recommend, if you want to just jump right in because you are just really adventurous and you just want to get started, then, just ask a friend or something like that, hey, can I do a reading for you? I want to tell you about your soul, and just do it. But for most people, that's going to be a little bit too intimidating. So for a typical person, I would recommend getting a divination tool to work with. And there are many divination tools. I don't know all of them, but some that are accessible to everyday people include oracle cards. The oracle cards are easier to use than tarot cards. So you can think about, okay, do I want to get a deck of oracle cards? They come with a book that you can just read. You can teach yourself how to use them or take a course online. There's many low-cost courses on how to read oracle cards. You can also use a pendulum. You really want to teach yourself. When it comes to intuition, if you can find a mentor who will work with you, great. But if not, you can teach yourself. So you could use a pendulum, like I stated. You could learn how to do crystal readings or how to work with runes or just any divination tool. Usually you'll feel called to a particular one. So some sort of tool, you want to teach yourself how to use that and work with that to build up your confidence intuitively. And then once you've learned how to work with a tool, or maybe you want your tool to be your own body and learning how to work with that. Maybe you want to take a course on channeling or something like that. But pick a tool that feels right to you, some sort of tool or training. Then what you want to do is you want to practice and train your intuition. It's not very typical that people just go from nothing, with their intuition to everything. It's usually that they train their intuition. Really good psychics, really good healers are working every day for years and years and years to perfect their craft. And I believe that our intuition works like a muscle. And so, if you want to be a good runner, what do? You go out jogging every day, right? And eventually you build up your endurance and it's just nothing. You're able to do it effortlessly. That's how intuition works as well. So you've got to just use it. And you might not want to because you're thinking, it's not going to be right at first, so I don't want to use it. Well, you're probably not going to, after not exercising at all, be able to walk out the door and, run either. Sometimes we have to walk before we can run. So, but you do it, you go out jogging because you have that dream of wanting to be able to be a runner, right? So it's the same thing with your intuition. So you want to start small, maybe, unless you're, again, really, really motivated, then you can start big. But most people want to start small. So typical little things that you can do to work with your intuition, you want to incorporate it on a day-to-day basis. So here's some things that you can try. Let's say you go to school or you work in a place that has an elevator or maybe multiple elevators. When you're standing next to an elevator during the day, you can try to feel, okay, which one of these doors is going to open? And you can sort of test just without anyone even knowing. You can be working with your intuition that way. When you hear your phone ring or you hear, a buzz or some sort of notification, you can try to feel into, who was that just contacted me? Who was that? And learn how, don't beat yourself up if you're wrong, but just learn, what does it feel like to be right? How does that feel different, when the message is coming from our soul versus, from somewhere else? So you can do that. You can try to feel into what time it is. This is one that I do a lot. It's really trippy. Sometimes I won't look at the clock for 3 or 4 hours, and I'll just guess the time, to the minute, and it will be right. So I'm working that way at this time. But you just do things like that, where nobody even needs to know, but you're just testing, instead of just looking right away. Just test yourself a little bit. You can also sort of covertly do this with other people too. Like, let's say, you cross a friend or something like that, throughout the day, and you say, oh, hi, how are you? And they say, oh, hi, how are you? Let's say you feel something that's going on with that person. You can just sort of work it into conversation if you get an intuitive message and just say, hey, let's say you sense that the person's a little under the weather. You could say, hey, was it a rough night for you? Did you get enough sleep last night? Or whatever. If you feel like they didn't, like, sometimes you can work it in like that, and the person will be like, wow, how'd you know? Yeah, I didn't get enough sleep last night. Or something like that. So you work in little messages in that way, and then the people will usually give you confirmation. And you can be doing this all day long, and sometimes people will say, oh, no, I'm fine. Sometimes people lie, so that's not always necessarily exactly accurate, but usually if you tap into something like that and you say it, the people will tell you that they were right. So once you get back past that sort of covert way of working with your intuition by yourself, then it's time to work with your intuition with other people. A really awesome way to start is to establish a trade with somebody else who's trying to work on their intuition. Even now I have a couple different trades going on because I think these are fun with other people. So, find a friend. If you don't have a friend on the twin flame path or somebody else working on their intuition, I suggest maybe joining a Facebook group or something like that for twin flames or for working on your intuition and making a friend that way who's interested in growing their intuition. But ask somebody, hey, would you like to trade messages from spirit or intuitive messages or whatever? And then set up a trade like that. Maybe you do that once a week or once a month where the person can send you their questions and you give them your feedback and vice versa. And So if you do an intuitive trade like that, make sure it's always a trade. It's not really a good idea to just do free readings for a bunch of people because you'll get depleted. There needs to be some sort of exchange. So let's say you're doing a trade with a friend like that who's also on the spiritual path. Make sure that you not only give them their intuitive messages, but you give them a lot of feedback on whatever intuitive messages they gave you and vice versa. And so then you can see, ask for real honest feedback so you can see, what it feels like when you're getting a message that's accurate versus not. Because that's ultimately what the learning process is like. It's like, and that's really the only way you can learn. What does it feel like when something's moving through me that's truly from spirit versus if it isn't, right? So make sure you're getting a lot of feedback as you are practicing. And then another tip, this one's, what people will usually tell you, but meditate or get quiet. The messages from spirit are there. Your guides are with you. They are with you. They are there. You have at least, everybody has multiple guides, but you have at least one that is literally with you physically all the time, from the time that you're born. So sometimes we just need to get quiet. And not everybody responds to typical meditation, but find something that puts you in a meditative state. Whether that is, maybe setting up like an altar space, somewhere in your home and sitting quietly for 10 to 15 minutes a day, or maybe even more, or whether it's listening to guided meditation, or whether it is going for a walk or gardening or exercise is actually when people get a lot of messages from spirit sometimes. So whatever it is, make sure you're spending that time. Usually if you get quiet, messages will come through. The question is if you are actually listening. We want to have two-way communication with spirit, two-way. Sometimes we just reach out to our guides when we're in a really bad place or something like that, and we ask them to help us and they come through or whatever. But you ideally want to spend a lot of time listening too, not just talking to spirit, but listening as well. So what I would say is, as a final tip, is to let spirit or let your guides know that you want to work on your intuition and ask them for help. Ask them to turn up the volume a little bit on your intuition, because our guides only work with our permission. So you want to say, hey, I give you permission to communicate more frequently with me and to do whatever's necessary to get my attention intuitively. So ask your guides for help with that. And then it's really just taking the plunge, because most of us do hear spirit all the time, but we just don't trust it, or we don't act on it. So it's just making that decision that, you're going to trust those things that are coming through. Usually things that come through from spirit don't make any sense. And they don't make any sense according to our logical mind and what we're thinking. Like, for example, you could be driving down the road and you're thinking, well, what am I going to make for dinner? What am I going to make for dinner? What am I going to make for dinner? And maybe, you're thinking about pasta, or you're thinking about, I'm going to make stir fry or whatever. And then all of a sudden there's a message that comes in and you see, that's what happened to me. I would see it, but maybe you think, I need to write a letter to my best friend from college. So all of a sudden, that pops in. If something like that pops in and it's not related at all to what your logical mind was thinking about, it's almost always a message from spirit. So sometimes just slowing down and taking note of those things is all that we need to do. So I wanted to talk for just a moment here at the end of this audio about my own experience, transitioning from doing regular work to being a psychic full-time, and how I did that, because the person who asked this question was also curious about this. So basically, I was born with a lot of intuitive abilities. I grew up in a haunted house, and I used to see spirits in my third eye. I used to see a whole bunch of people, like a whole huge family, actually, of different people in my house, but I wouldn't see them, typically with my eyes. I would see them, Like I would just see my regular house, but then I'd have a flash in my third eye of like the person, and I didn't know what was going on, you know. And I believe that there are psychic abilities in my family, you know, on my mother's side for generations. I strongly believe this. However, I grew up in a really religious family that basically says if you're having these experiences, then they're demonic. And so I would tell, you know, my parents, I think there's some people here, you know, and stuff like that. I can see the people that used to live here and stuff, and they basically said, don't ever say that to anyone. Don't talk about that. That's your imagination and stuff. So as a kid and a teenager and all the way into right around the time I was 20 or 21, I wasn't really sure what was happening. I would see, like, flashes like that, and like I said, that's how my intuitive channels work. All the time, and because my parents and family told me that psychic abilities weren't real, I really did think I must be magical or something, because I would see these things and I thought, wow, if this is my imagination and I imagine it and then it happens, then I must have some magical abilities. So that was kind of funny, and I really didn't know. I was really confused, and I think a lot of people that are, you know, it depends. Some people are really blessed and go to, like, churches that are really open and stuff like that. But a lot of people that grow up religious are kind of confused about what's going on with them, because a lot of churches tell you not to communicate with spirit. So if you have a situation like that, sometimes we have to clear out our old fears that may have, or programming that might have been put into us from our family or religion or society or whatever. But anyway, so a lot of people experience, so let's say you're a young person and you don't really know how to use your intuition yet. That's totally fine, because most people don't open up intuitively at all until like the age of 25. So for a typical person, like, for example, the language acquisition time period for regular spoken language when we're a kid is like from, you know, around 18 months or 2 years. The psychic acquisition period when we are getting our psychic language abilities, the very earliest is usually right there in our mid-20s. That's when we're like a preschooler. That's when we're starting to acquire the psychic abilities. And then most people experience a huge increase around the age of 50. So it's really in later life that our intuition really expands. And then I feel like from 50 to the end of our life, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger as we prepare to return to spirit. So anyway, so yeah, so I definitely noticed when I was younger that most of my gifts do relate to relationships and being able to tell whether or not people are supposed to be together and if they're one true love or not. So as a teenager and stuff, I could always tell if people were having an affair, things like that, friends and family, etc. I would be able to tell what people's feelings were for each other, even like different teachers in the school and administrators and stuff. When I was in school, I would always know, even if they hadn't yet expressed their feelings, I always knew, and other kids and friends who had feelings for each other and stuff like that. So that part was pretty open. I just had a complete private life of just being haunted and having experiences with spirits my whole entire life, and I was really professional. That's really an understatement, but I was really a professional, so I never mentioned it to anyone because my parents told me don't talk about this when I was a kid. So, but eventually I did. Like when I was in my 20s, I finally, you know, was having a birthday party one year, and I said, you know, somebody asked me something about spirits or something like that, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to tell my story. And so I came out of this sort of psychic, not the psychic closet, but maybe the medium closet, which I don't even do mediumship readings at this time, so please don't come to me for that. But anyway, so I came out of that closet sharing my experiences, and yeah, like I found that people were really open and really curious and stuff, and I worked for a while as a ghost hunter right after that, and it was just really interesting to see how much more rich my abilities got once I started to be open about them, because it's kind of hard to grow your abilities if you're actively working to hide them all the time. So I opened up a little bit about my abilities or my intuition. I never used the word psychic, not even until like a year ago did I ever use that word. But I just said I was intuitive, and people just started coming to me and asking questions, and I just offered them guidance, and it just started out that way. I did have one of these real strange experiences, though, that really where I really crossed over from being just a regular, like living a pretty regular life, to being a psychic. I did lose consciousness in 2014, and I seem to just have gotten a huge upgrade of my consciousness during that time that I was kind of not there. And then I just came back with a lot of messages from Spirit about what my life was supposed to be and why I needed to follow my joy and all that stuff. And I started to live my life that way. And then, I met my twin flame about 3 months after that. And once I met my twin, Zaire, it was just, I just got it caused like a Kundalini awakening, because my chakras all got activated. And then after that, the rest is history. I just started seeing all kinds of visions all the time and stuff. And, still a part of me felt pretty unsure of what was happening, or, thought, oh, maybe I'm just going crazy or something like that. But sure enough, just everything I was seeing would just come true. And so I was giving people, and by that time I'd given many people intuitive messages just in conversation or just for free, and I was noticing that a lot of those were coming true. So I was like, I guess I'm psychic. I'd also been told that I was psychic by many different psychics, but that's, so whatever. So I hadn't fully integrated that, but yeah, I just the turning point for me was really like when I was in separation from my twin, and I realized that I needed to be with him, and really I was going to have to leave my job and everything that I had built. And I was like, well, you know what? I guess I will just do intuitive coaching and stuff. I'll just use, I realized, what I had to do is use my natural God-given abilities, to found a business, to sort of sustain myself. And so I did that. I just decided to sort of just say to Spirit, if I'm gonna do this, and if I really have these abilities and this is what I'm supposed to do, then, please bring me clients. And if it's not, please don't bring me any clients. And so I just added a services tab to a blog that I was writing. And, the next day I woke up and I had 2 clients, and it was like that for a while. And then, I don't know, I woke up a year later with 100 requests in one day for readings. And I don't do that many now, but I refer a lot of people to other people. But anyway, Spirit apparently wanted me to do this because I keep getting people, and so the rest is sort of history. But in my own experience, I've read books and things like that have helped me, work with my intuition. But even books, I haven't really read them in full. I just kind of, when I get curious, I'll read certain passages or whatever. But basically, I have not taken any courses at all with my intuition or to anything formalized. Some people may need that, but I haven't done that. I've just done readings. I've just done what I felt guided to do from Spirit, and yeah, I've gotten pretty great feedback from people. Most people seem to really enjoy them. And I about a year into being a psychic, I had just a totally nerve-wracking experience where I wanted to join an organization of psychics, so I had to be tested in my abilities. But even at that point, with intuition, sometimes it's hard for us to really see ourselves clearly, our intuitive self. So even then, I was just so torn up, and I did the reading, and I thought, the test reading, and I thought, oh my gosh, that was pretty average, or that was pretty low par. But the people said, no, that was 100% accurate. So I got admitted into that organization, and now I've done almost 2,000 readings so far. I'm a little bit less than 2 years into my business. So, in my own experience, it's just it was just overcoming my fear of being wrong and overcoming my fear of stigma from other people about being psychic, or, having that mean that somehow something was wrong with me or it was some sort of dark thing. So I just had to overcome my own self and my fear of judgment from my family and friends, and I had to let go of a really, really lucrative and ego-fulfilling path that I was on to do spiritual work instead. So it was mostly not about actually figuring out how to use my abilities. It was just about getting out of my own way, and saying, yes, I have a degree in global leadership, and yes, I could be an executive director of a company or an organization, but my heart wants to do readings to help people find their one true love, and just in facing myself. And that's not always an easy thing, but I think it's always worth it, and I think it's always the right choice to follow our heart. So if your heart is telling you now's the time to expand my intuition, now's the time to work with my intuitive gifts, do it. You won't regret it. So this has been a long answer, but here concludes my answer to the question, how can I improve my intuition? If you have a question that you think can benefit the Twin Flame community, please email it to me at mayasbrightstarcreations@gmail.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.